2 hours maybe?
Do you dial the same numbers back?
That's good for the
Potatoes, lobster, cigar.
It'll be
Yeah.
crispy.
Oh, exactly.
Yep.
I've got.
Okay, you ready, Michelle? Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Board of Finance to order on September 15th, hard to believe. We have, just for a roll call, on the phone, Anna, you're there. Matt is on the phone, and Mary Jo's on the phone. Is anybody else on the phone? In the room, we have Jude Reed, BJ, David, Mr. Griswold, Grubb, Janet, and myself. So, that means all regular members are present. We are missing Mr. Burrows. So, we don't need to seat anybody. Financial reports. Nicole is not here today. You should have received the financials in the mail, in your packets. I won't be able to give you any details, because I just found out late this afternoon that she wasn't coming, and I didn't have my packet with me to look at to ask her questions.
It didn't look like there was anything outside of what had been budgeted.
Yeah, the one thing that is going to be interesting is emergency management, the COVID expenditures. Nicole included me on an email that they received from FEMA that some of the things we thought would be reimbursable may not be at this point.
I sat with Tim Griswold. I sat with Roberge, and FEMA's put out these directives. So you have what they're working on now is from March to June 30th.
Okay.
The submission date's supposed to be September 30th, but I saw from OPM that they might be pushing that date because there's still some loose ends and so forth. But then from June 30th to September 15th will be another segment, because on the 15th, he can amplify it better. On the 15th, the rules will be changing, and some of the reimbursements we've been expecting, not necessarily 100% approved, will be less likely to be approved, such as rangers and so forth. And luckily, most of our ranger activity is over. We did have them at the front door, but they've been absent for a week as they go to school.
Yeah.
So Roberge is pulling together a lot of the police wages and other stuff, and it's quite a task, and it all has to be scripted in FEMA-ese. You keep having to talk about health and safety and saving lives and all that stuff. It gets to be what could be 3 pages can be 7 or 8. So he can comment on that nitty gritty. But so where they do say that, for instance, like PPE, the personal protection equipment, they say if it's an operational expense and it's not reimbursed, except if it's for health and safety.
Of course. Why would you be wearing it if it wasn't for health? I mean, people don't walk around here normally with a mask on.
So Dave, I just gave a quick summary from
We're just
March to June 30th and June 30th, or July 1 to September 15th.
What was the original question?
Well, and Dave, we have a couple of members of the Board of Finance on the phone, and I think it'd be difficult for them to hear you. So if you don't mind, come on down a little bit closer to the phone. I think you'll still be properly distanced here. We're going over the monthly financials for August, in which emergency management has COVID $19,000 year to date, and storm. So there's 2 different things. I guess we'd stick with COVID, which is what we were talking about initially. And Tim was explaining that you have March 15th to June 30th, and you have July 1st to September 15th period, or 2 different buckets, or 2 different filings that have to be done. We don't need a notebook full of details, but I think just a
Okay.
where we are and what we're,
Who's on the phone?
other members of the Board of Finance and
Adam
Mary
Burrows.
Jo. Oh, Adam Burrows is there now too as well.
Good evening, all. Okay, to start out with, back in March, the federal government identified this risk.
Right.
The state of Connecticut acted with a declaration of emergency, a public health emergency. We followed suit on the 16th. And at that point in time, it was basically standing up our emergency responders and our forces to be able to protect lives against the risk of COVID. How we went about doing that, we developed operational objectives. We focused that we had to strongly communicate to the community and to our responder forces. We recognize that we need appropriate PPE, consumable items to be able to protect our first responders and our critical infrastructure personnel. We implemented controlling features to try to protect against the immediate threat of the virus, and to enact and enforce the declarations and the executive orders that came out from the governor's office.
Right.
So right now, we're sitting on over 52, 62, 66 executive orders.
Right.
So looking at that, they started with hitting us out of the throttle fast.
I don't know that we need, again,
Okay.
I think we're aware of all of that. I
All
think
right.
basically what our focus is tonight and every month is where are we within the budget?
Okay.
This is an area that was obviously unbudgeted. It could not have been budgeted. And our discussion we had last month surrounded making sure as much of what we've spent on this, we would be able to classify and get reimbursed by FEMA.
Yes.
And as Tim said, understanding we have to dance through some
Serious
FEMA
hoops.
language and some things that may be obvious to us that would be related may not be as obvious to them unless it's presented properly.
Basically, that's correct.
Okay.
To June, I've got $68,558.49 allotted to equipment cost. I do not have labor costs yet for that time period. We've compiled summaries on it, and now I have to apply the labor rates plus fringes to each one of those individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that relate to, well, Nicole's not here, because we got 19 grand.
That was what was spent in August.
I'm sorry, it says year to date, so that's.
That's
Oh, I'm
July
sorry.
to-
That's July then,
but
July
that's
and
July,
August.
so I get it, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
So we've
Fiscal year
expended,
to date.
yeah, right now, looking at reimbursement, I'm focusing on $68,558.49 for contract labor service of the attorneys, contract labor service for Blackburn, and then materials and supplies that we had to purchase.
And part of that was also personnel. Once town hall, well, it will be once you calculate it.
Once I
That's
calculate
not
the
part of the
labor.
68, but that's.
Right, the labor cost is
Yep.
additional to the
Yep.
$68,000.
And that's all due as of now by September 30th.
Which will,
Submission.
Right.
the timelines have been pushed back twice, and we anticipate them being pushed back again due to the fact that 169 towns are all doing the same. What the
Right.
heck? September 2nd, back in the end of July, I formally applied for FEMA assistance with a project manager. And September 2nd was my first contact time with them. So the entire month of August was just spent collecting data as much as I can. I met with her verbally or virtually over the phone. We went through the online application process now. No more just submitting data in hard copy. It all has to be entered electronically, which is scanned and submitted. and we have to determine what our project costs are. There's a jump line between what they classify as small project and then what's called large project. $131,100 is small project. Anything over $131,100 is considered by FEMA as a large project.
Is that based on fiscal year or just this
Cost.
event?
Just this.
So it's a combination of March 15th through June 30th,
Yes.
and then
No.
July 1st going forward.
Right now, it's just between March and June.
Right.
So sitting at these numbers, not knowing what my labor is, I'm really hoping to make sure that I am under the 131,000,
I would think.
which would be an easier application to submit.
Beside labor and equipment / supplies, is there any other category?
The categories that are broken down are contract labor, legal, contract labor, cleaning, and then equipment, which is broken out to PPE and cleaning agents or cleaning supplies, personal protective equipment, communications and public safety announcements, signs and signage, barricades and security points, and then force account labor, unbudgeted labor, which I'm looking to hang the,
But just to interrupt, is that 68,000 for the stuff you enumerated,
Yes.
short of labor? That's all in there.
it's in one of those buckets.
And then now the labor, you don't have that quantified yet. but
I don't
it's
have
gonna
that
be
quantified.
Basically two categories then?
Beg your pardon?
It'll be basically two categories, equipment supplies and then labor.
And services.
Labor or contract services, equipment and supplies, which is broken out into this menu. And then equipment, which is town-owned, has a fee, and then overtime labor and unbudgeted labor. Unbudgeted labor, if we can do the right wordsmithing to be able to include the Rangers in under the, because they operated under law enforcement, being able to quantify their times that they spent at the beach as a security checkpoint for health and safety.
I wouldn't.
It's going to be a stretch.
That's a stretch. I mean, I think what we were talking about last month here was the labor that was used to secure town hall or to check people once they started working here. I mean, we budget for the Rangers at the beach.
Yeah.
Granted, their role down there changed, but
And that's peanuts anyways.
that's, you know, but I would think
I
it'd
was
be,
under the impression that it was a very severe number,
well,
the way it was brought back to me.
I think,
Well, you can see here, Rangers are 42,000 on a 40,000 budget as of August, so, you know, all you have is a few more September,
but a good deal of that was the fact that you had two Rangers here.
yeah, no, they're $12, $15 an hour, so it's not huge, but
Yeah,
it
not
adds
huge.
up.
But I mean, I think hopefully we budgeted appropriately for the beach coverage for a normal year.
But we put more people on,
Okay.
I think. They have more Rangers than they did the year before.
Not knowing what their budget was, I can attest that we had, out of the total number of Rangers that were hired, I can justify 4 Rangers every day, every week, solely dedicated to the purposes of COVID.
But it comes down to what we were told last month is the reports you have to supply have to include actually the employee and their hours and where they work. Well,
Just
okay,
giving you an example.
all right.
We've
But,
compiled
okay,
all of
I mean,
that.
that's where we were last month.
Yes.
It was a concern that that would not be able to be compiled.
This was compiled.
David,
So, Dave, how does the town relate to Region 18?
Totally separate entity.
And so they are compiling their own, and they have to,
They're
they
on
have
their own.
a different process, or?
Similar process. Totally
But
separate.
you're not involved?
I'm not involved in that
Okay.
at all.
They're around 300,000, I think.
Yeah, I just didn't know,
Yeah.
you know.
So, I'm not sure I'm clear. The only thing that hasn't been compiled within that bottom line number for FEMA is our overtime labor and our budgeted labor. Everything else is covered.
Our overtime labor
Yep.
for officers and trooper,
Okay,
our unbudgeted hours, or unbudgeted labor for the additional rangers that were hired to help support COVID, either be at the beach or being here as a greeter. Those are the only three labor parts that I haven't started compiling.
So the focus right now is taking care of March 15th through June 30th.
Yes,
on that.
And then you'll have a filing date for the July 1 through whenever.
and as we continue through this, documentation and supporting information coming from both FEMA and from the state started out with this being the guides.
Yep.
And they're narrowing it down. And in a reality aspect, you've got every community in the country doing this. So, the pot's only so big.
And even at they're only going to reimburse 75%.
Right.
Anyway.
And the state of Connecticut is pulling from other federal resources for other separate pots, like the CARE Act,
Yep.
which was separate from the FEMA pile. They're pulling from there. They're pulling from Health and Human Services for grant money. They're pulling from FDA for the food programs. They're picking fruit all over the place. Where we fit into which bucket of the state is what they call CSR program, I believe it is, which is COVID-related services or support.
So when is is there any timeline for the state information? Is it the same as FEMA?
Currently, right now, FEMA's submittal can go as long as it takes you to do it. The state is putting stop dates out to get municipalities to apply for their portion, the state funding. FEMA's came out, they both came out at the same time. State put a deadline on it on July 30, I believe. Then they extended it to August 30 because municipalities weren't anywhere into their FEMA reimbursement policy practice yet. Now that we're getting down to the middle of September, with the deadline being extended again to the end of September, at a municipality level, we anticipate that being pushed back again because municipalities like here, we're just not ready to hit the final send.
I would think our goal should be to be ready to file that by the end of September.
We're trying to.
I mean, I think we need to do everything we can
Yeah.
to make that filing, because they may not extend it.
But if FEMA rejects a particular item,
Then we
that
go
item
into
can go to
negotiation.
CARE. But if CARE's deadline is the same as FEMA, it's kind of crazy that it shouldn't. How are we going to know from FEMA what's not eligible so we can send it to CARE if CARE's deadline is the same time?
Hypothetically, the way the system is you could send it into FEMA. FEMA reviews it. They provide you back with comments.
How quickly? With friggin' 50 states.
I have no idea. I have no idea from the send button to what the timeline is between hitting send to their internal review to their coming back.
And I don't think anybody out there can give you an answer to that, but I guess my point is we should be in there as quickly as possible.
We are trying that.
So we're not.
I mean, we need to make sure we're in there,
In the queue.
even if they extend the deadline, we get our paperwork in there so that we're first in. I don't know if that'll make any difference, but the bucket's bigger in the beginning than it's going to be a month later.
I know that.
BJ?
Does anybody, whether it's you or Dave, or Tim, have any estimate of the order of magnitude of the net out-of-budget expense that the COVID crisis may cause the town? We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, 50,000, 100,000?
No, we're already at,
Well, it's
just for
68 right now.
68
Plus
between,
labor.
for part of it, between March 15th and June 30th, 68,558.49.
Well,
And that does not include any labor over all the categories that Dave talked about.
But don't we assume that'll be reimbursed at 75%?
It may not be because they keep changing the rules as to what qualifies. They may not accept, let's just stick with the 68,558. They may not accept all the items in that we've spent money on.
But they'll accept, we assume they'll accept most of it, we assume.
I wouldn't assume anything.
Neither would
Okay,
I.
But-
so the worst case would be we get no reimbursement until
Right.
100%.
That's right.
Correct.
That's right.
So if
So-
that's the worst case, what sort of them were reasonable? Well, what's the worst case in terms of our total out-of-pocket expenditures? $100,000?
No, we gotta be more than that by now.
We may be close to 120, 130,000.
With the
What-
labor, because the
I'm talking-
68 is identical, yeah.
That's
Labor,
Are you,
over-
Dave,
overtime
are you talking about that,
First,
what time frame? That first
March.
March 15th to June 30th. You're not counting anything in July, August, or September.
No, because I didn't want to see any of it.
Okay, so BJ, he's talking 120 for that
3
last
months.
fiscal year. And then who knows what it is. I mean, granted, a lot of this, if there was equipment and things purchased, there might have been a little
Front loading.
front loading,
There was a lot
But-
of front loading.
but there's still, labor probably is more the cost now.
Order of magnitude couldn't exceed 200,000 out of pocket.
I don't anticipate.
Depends how
that
long we
unless- Unless, how long we go.
Yeah.
And two, how much labor cost would be involved in. I mean, right now, the labor cost just here for town hall from July 1 with the reopening in June, the July primary, July tax season, and then everybody calling town hall because we reopened for scheduling and permits and beach passes and all of that, and the influx of people, we were averaging approximately 50 to 60 people a day coming back in through the doors. That has wound down now through the month of July and August.
So, but 200 grand sounded like it was the outside number of the overall.
Yeah, so if we get 50% reimbursement,
It's 100 grand.
it's just 100 grand order of magnitude.
And BJ, that's why we have a surplus.
Right.
That's why we have reserve
Yeah,
funds.
the order of
for
magnitude
things like
turns
this.
into this question, yeah.
Yep,
There are some municipalities out there that are going in the red big time on this
yeah.
because
But
of no
if we,
reserve.
if we look at the police overtime year to date, it's 18,800 approximately. And then you throw some rangers in there at $12, $15 an hour. You know, the labor may not be a monster addition to the 68,000.
I don't know that, Tim, because I have no idea what the labor cost, what the
Well, if
labor
you say
hours
over,
are.
if it's police
What the
overtime,
budget
the
is.
gross
What the
police
budget is.
overtime, which,
That's budget wise.
but that might be just overtime for covering normal shifts, which
Right.
wouldn't be eligible, so.
Right.
Right.
It shouldn't exceed 18,800.
Correct.
And then the state trooper, he's not showing much at all, but we know he's in there for some.
Yep.
But, 18, throw another 10 for trooper maybe, and it may not be giant money on top of 68.
Well, I think,
200 grand.
right, I mean, I think the main thing is, I think our concern, particularly after our discussion last month about this, is making sure that we get our filings in to FEMA. And
As quickly and efficiently.
And I think we need to get them in, I don't care, I mean, it is the 15th already, today's Tuesday, the end of the month, really next week. If they let us know next Wednesday they're gonna extend it, our stuff should be done by then and ready to go, and file it. Well, Dave,
Question, do you send it in both to whoever administers care as
No,
well as
It
FEMA?
goes to FEMA, and then FEMA goes back and forth with the discussion and the reviews, and then they kick it back over to the state. So once it goes in, we're
I know the way the
debating.
process is supposed to work, I'm just being devil's advocate.
It's,
But if we can't submit
It was
the
a
care
pipe
until
dream.
we get FEMA answer, that could be a month or 2 months.
That's why if you do
Could
a
be 6 months
parallel,
away.
Well,
you
that's
say,
what I'm
well,
saying.
I didn't know you could do a parallel, but now that we know,
Ignorance for them.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's a real question, Tim, I think, for you to talk to whoever in Hartford.
Ask our reps or something.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's big money in terms of
Well,
us being over budget, but it's not something that we can't
As a
fix in
town.
January at
Yeah.
a town meeting,
Right.
hopefully.
Talking about Region 18, which I understand is not your jurisdiction, what is the sense though regarding the expenses that Region 18 is incurring? Are they substantially increased by responding to COVID or decreased? Ultimately, we're going to bear our share of any unreimbursed Region 18 expenses.
At the end of last year, their year that ended June 30th, they were under budget. They were spending money on, because of COVID, and the schools were closed down, they didn't have sports teams, they didn't have buses running, they didn't have a lot of expenses, so they were doing projects in the schools that were planned for this year. Last year, I think they took the whole tennis court
yeah.
project out of last year's budget as opposed to splitting it over the 2 years. Not knowing what they were gonna have to do this year. I think their real overrun is probably gonna be this current year
Do you
with
have
increased
any
transport.
sense of that, whether operations of Region 18
At,
can be
at the school meeting event there,
Yeah.
Ian was saying your surplus return will probably not be as robust as it was. So they have savings from last year, and they have, I think they submitted like 300,000.
Something like
that.
And I don't know if they have a different program of being reimbursed, whether they get it and then it's audited, or I'm not too sure, but he said it's not terrible, but, you know, don't expect as, you know, it's gonna be a lesser return of money at the end of the fiscal year, which is still a ways off.
They, I mean, I know they've made modifications, obviously, but they were looking to hire some full-time substitute teachers because they couldn't have subs coming in and out of, they didn't think it was prudent to have subs coming in and out, different people coming in and out of the building every day. So they're gonna hire a few that were gonna be in there every day, and move them around. And, I mean, they're full-time, like entry, not part-time, 25-hour week, but entry-level teacher pay.
I was going to say that
With
it
benefits.
wasn't a substitute teacher rate they were hiring.
No, not the typical,
They said
80.
$100 a day,
It, what?
$100 a day.
No, these
That's
were
a substitute.
70 plus.
these are,
They got long-term subs, right?
Yeah.
If you hire a long-term sub, it's different from a daily sub.
correct, and that's basically what these are, and, but they were giving them they were offering benefits to get people to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're talking 40 or 50 grand,
Easy.
easy, for the base pay plus bennies.
Plus benefits, yeah.
Yep.
But in the long run, maybe it's cheaper.
It
Yeah.
could be, and they have to up their sub pay. I mean, their sub pay, I think, has been $90 a day for 10 or 15 years, for 6 or 8 hours of work.
So we
Yeah.
don't have.
Minimum wage gets, it just went up. So, I think, Dave, thank you. I mean, I don't know if there's anything, I know there's a lot of unknowns for everybody.
There's a lot of
That's
unknowns.
not just what you're dealing with, but,
And the diligence about thinking about all this detail about what's COVID and what's not is
Yep.
a lot of work, so I
As
appreciate that.
Tim and I sat down the other night, it was going through the whole application starts with a narrative. So basically, you're painting a footprint or a picture of the community and how you respond.
Yeah,
He and I are wordsmithing that together.
yep,
From there, the numbers are the numbers, it's just which pile and just
Yep.
put it in.
yep,
The labor is where I need the biggest, either A, assistance, or B, support in gathering all of this information and compiling. I have 26 packages like this that all have to be inserted with the hourly rate, the fringe benefits, the total hour rate, the total cost, and then mapped it all out.
Right.
I don't have
Manpower.
manpower to do that.
Where
To
can we
build-
get that help, Tim?
To build this out, I
Deborah
use,
Wells.
to build this out just for the unbudgeted labor of the rangers, I use 2 of the rangers, which I can charge their time directly to administrative costs.
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to either continue that or pass this over to Nicole and say, fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
And I don't
Or,
think that's gonna
or
go
just
over well.
temporary accounting labor or something.
Somebody,
like that,
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't think you'd want to dump that on Nicole or Amy.
Right now.
You know,
You know, I think you gotta find somebody outside that can
Can't you do that?
put an Excel sheet together and,
Stop the,
you know,
account
with,
to do that?
Well, they got what used to be called, whatever Kelly is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
College services.
It's not Kelly
Well,
Girl.
Isn't that reimbursable?
AR.
yeah,
Yeah.
If it's a
Some-
reimbursable-
some of it could be taken in as administrative cost. Paying an accounting firm $75 or whatever an hour,
No.
I'd have a hard time with it.
No, but
No.
this is like $30 an hour
Yeah.
for Kelly services, you
Yep.
know, that sort
Yeah.
of thing.
and that would be money well spent. I mean, they would need some guidance from Amy or Nicole
And to get them started.
to get them started with the rates and everything else, but
Actually,
then,
they just need a summary of the rates.
right,
And I think if I could use going even lesser, let me use the 2 girls that did this much to allow them to finish it out.
Are they employees now?
they were, but
They
they're,
were.
They're rangers.
They're rangers, they're
Oh,
part-time,
but,
unbudgeted.
but are they in college
Are
now?
they available?
They are available.
Okay.
So do it.
Math rangers.
I mean,
Yeah, that's,
Tim, well, that's not our decision, that's Tim's decision with our recommendation.
Well, we'll work that out.
Yeah,
All right, so we'll
But-
pick this back up tomorrow morning.
It's not gonna break the bank.
no,
Well, there's also reimbursable.
Be money well spent.
right.
True.
75% of
It's
it.
circular.
My goal going into this week, Andy, was to have this completed for handoff by Friday.
That's great.
And that gives Nicole 5 days next week to manipulate the numbers and how she has to submit her packaging to the state. Because
Well, so you're submitting, you're putting the package together for FEMA, and then she's gonna be able to pull off that to go to the state. But, so as David was alluding to before, so you file those
Together,
simultaneously,
yeah.
even though the state's really wanting to wait to see what you get back from FEMA.
Yes.
They may just hold it and say, okay, we got it, thanks for sending it.
At least we're in the budget.
Let us, well, that's my thing with FEMA. Get in there early, because
Yeah.
you don't know. They may say, okay, geez, we got this little old line, let's burn through this, and we got the money, whereas they might get to the end of the 168th town in Connecticut and say, we only got 20 grand left, here. I don't know. That's great. Well, again, it's been an interesting 9 months.
Now remember, this is,
6 months.
all of this is for March to June.
Right.
We have to recreate all of this again whenever the
That deadline.
July to whatever.
Yeah, but that, I would think, by the exercise you're going through March to June,
Yeah.
that gives you the template
Oh, yeah.
for what you need to do to go forward, and we should be, every month, keeping track of this stuff within that template.
Yeah.
That we know kind of what they're looking for, so it should be a much easier process whenever the next deadline for this time
Come
frame comes
September
in.
15th, the spigot's getting kind of turned off.
That's today, Tim. Today's the 15th of September.
You know?
So, you got anything else you gotta spend money on quick, right, before midnight, get it signed off on, and
Yeah, get it checked up. Also with this, on this rail track, those 2 trains, on a parallel track, I now have, starting out, the preliminary damage assessment for storm ISAs.
yeah.
So
Well, we didn't get to that line yet.
we're running that one. A brief summary on that, emergency protective measures, category B, such as overtime, top overtime. We operated the EOC for 4 days. We had some labor costs, material costs up there. And also for category A, which is debris removal, straight time and overtime is covered for debris removal plus equipment. So all of Ed's costs for his straight time labor and his overtime labor for the entire debris removal process would be included in at whatever the cost is. And also final disposal with Green Cycle coming in and actually chipper dosing the massive 100-foot long, something foot wide, 40 feet tall debris pile we've got down there. Chip it all up. We'll have an accurate volume account going out in tractor trailers where we don't have to measure the log and the length and have a spotter for it. Chipping is so much easier, but that's scheduled sometime towards the end of the month. So looking at Isaiah's, I think that one's going to be easier once I can put this to the left and then move forward into that. In the meantime, we're doing school inspections, school fire drills, and hopefully nobody burns anything in town.
That'd be good. Any other questions? Well, Dave, I appreciate you coming out.
Not
I
a
didn't realize
problem.
you're going to be here. but
Nicole
that's-
sent me an email, says, can you explain these, or would you like to come? And I think it's so much easier to try to come and
Yep,
have a dialogue with this group
yep.
than try to put it down into words.
Well, you get to do that for FEMA, so.
Well, I know, from my English major over here.
Good.
Is it effect, effect, affect,
Yeah.
this fact?
Disinfect. Disinfect.
Thanks, Dave.
No, he plays with my head. Does a comma go here or does a comma go there?
Thank you.
And is anybody going to really read it?
Yeah.
That's the sad part.
If he reads it, somebody will read it.
Okay.
All right. And other than that, as the chair, feel free to shoot me an email with any questions from the
Yep.
board.
Yep.
Obviously, CC Tim and Nicole on it, but I'm
Yep.
more than willing to have an open dialogue
Yep.
that way too.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Okay. So, the rest of the financials. That was good timing for him to be here. I appreciate that. There's really nothing else out of the ordinary, right, Tim?
I think it's straightforward.
Straightforward stuff. Some carryover was spent. Mile Creek Bridge, Old Line Firefighters gear. That was back ordered.
Yeah.
That was the gear probably from the Guy's Oil Fire.
It's the outfits, the fireproof outfits. for
Yeah.
them? Yeah.
That had to be replaced. Next page are your special funds. And the carryover summary, which were what we approved last month. And there were some things spent. Town Hall, Public Works, the bridge, Mile Creek Road.
Nice job on something.
Yeah, Tim, any idea, property tax collections, are there people that are paying them now, taking advantage of the,
3% stuff.
yeah? Or did most of the people just pay?
We're at 51% collections.
Well, 47 remaining, so the
Yeah.
inverse of that.
I mean, July collection should be more than 50% because automotive's
Well,
in
that's,
there.
that's,
Yeah, total tax is 51% collected, a little over 51%.
it's undoubtedly a little less than usual, but I don't know that we have a percentage. From Judy, you could compare to a prior year. I
Well,
mean,
we could look at
back on
last
a chart of accounts and
August
see.
report. Which I didn't do. Any questions on this? budget transfers. Nicole did not leave me anything, the detail on that.
I'll move to table it then.
We can table it till next month. It has to be done prior to the audit being completed, but that wouldn't be done in that time frame anyway, so.
On budget transfers?
Yeah, it's, I still think it's $7,600. It's related to the buyback account. She was off in her calculations. And she's proposing to take it out of town hall contracted services. But I still think I'd prefer to wait till next month. Does that make sense to you, Tim?
This is for the sick time?
Yeah.
It's only 7/8 of the memo anyway.
Yeah.
But just to make sure there's nothing else, so we
Yeah.
don't have to do two. I mean, I'd rather have Nicole here, just in case there, and to make sure there's
Yeah.
not something else that,
Yeah, there may be
Pops
another
up.
one next month too.
Right.
So, yeah.
so. Okay, old business. I don't have any. Any new business? And obviously COVID is, other business.
What is other business?
Kind of open-ended, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's no funny business.
Right.
Get rid of that one.
Those are the new rules. All right, so now we're going to get to Michelle's favorite part, approving minutes. First, we're going to approve July 21st.
I'll move to approve July 21st minutes.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Sturgis. Any discussion?
Come on, Jeff.
I had no comments.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody on the phone? All right.
Nice job, Michelle, then.
It's approved. Any abstentions? Everybody's here, so good. Let's move right to August 18th. I hear an approval for August 18th minutes.
I'll move the minutes.
I'll
Mr.
second.
Kelsey,
I'll
seconded by
second.
Mrs. Sturgis. Any modifications, corrections? Wow.
Easy peasy.
All those in favor?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Abstain. Michelle, you have the 3 abstentions?
Got BJ, Grubb, and Mr. Kelsey abstaining. I think we had 3 in favor. There we go. All right.
I would say that's probably a first in all my years,
Aye.
not having a correction.
2 minutes.
That's about 25 years.
Finally get them perfect.
25 years for me.
There we go. All right. Way to go. First Selectmen's report.
Abstain.
Oh, boy. Okay, Connecticut Water, they're now going back in and doing the laterals in Soundview, south of 156. That work should wind up before the end of the year. and then that will complete their whole assignment there. They're also working with O-Line Shores. Having to do with the sewers, the 3 private beaches, we've been working on various documents. The Board of Selectmen approved the agreement, which we refer to as the agreement to join the cost-sharing agreement. Now, the cost-sharing agreement is the agreement that governs the spending of money on the shared assets, as well as sharing the operating costs of the pump station and other things. So because the 3 beaches got going on this a lot earlier than the town, we're not in the cost sharing agreement with the 3 beaches at this point. And with clean water filings and so forth, they don't want us in the cost sharing agreement at this point. So the agreement that we signed sets the stage that we pay, which we've already talked about in prior meetings, the $66,000, which would catch us up to date with things that they have spent, and talks about getting the intermunicipal agreements with New London for processing and with East Line for using the pipes and that sort of stuff. So we're set on that agreement, although it has not been signed. It's been approved to be signed. The second document is the street easement, which would govern, we would be granting easements to the other 3 beaches to use the collection pipes and the pump station going over our streets. And that would be coming in from Old Colony over Swan Avenue, going through Murata's lot, over the alley, over Hartford Avenue, and into Portland Avenue. Another pipe would come from Miami to that same pumping station at the end of Hartford, Portland. Then the pumping station would, Force Main would go up Portland and then make a right on Route 156 and onto East Lime's pumping station. So, in addition, Miami Beach, the western end needs to use Hawks Nest Road to have a pipe to collect material from the very houses on the edge of their beach association. They have to go out into that road, so they come down that road and then bend into the Miami Beach. I'm not sure how long it is, but it's probably...
In the two different blocks
Probably.
Miami has, okay?
Yeah.
Two intersections, and that's where they stop as far as being
Yeah, then they go
part of
back
Miami, then you're
Yeah.
in the private area.
Yeah. Yep. So that Hawks Nest segment, and then the last segment is Gorton Avenue, which is, see, when you look at Old Colony Beach does not extend north of 156, whereas O-Line Shores does and Soundview does. And so Soundview kind of is a T going over to Teddy Pizza and going over to Gordon Avenue. And so that would ultimately flow back down one of our 3 streets to get to the pump station. But on Gorton, which is sort of the dividing line between Soundview and O-Line Shores, there will be situated, presumably, an odor control facility. And it will be a shed about 12 feet by, I think it's 12 by 14, something like that. And it's going to be basically inject a calcium type material into the line to make it oh so sweet as it goes on. And it's supposed to offset the corrosive nature of the material. And I'm sure Randy Nixon could tell us more about that. But it needs to be up there or somewhere like that to be away from the water table. And they don't want it in a pump station. And there was a bit of a to-do about that location because a couple of residents are not happy that that same property, which is property of Old Lyme Shores, is being used as a staging area for their water project, not ours, but theirs. It'll be the pump station, this odor control facility, and they're very perturbed that this same location might be a staging area for the sewer pipe installation in Old Lyme Shores, which could be like a 2-year deal. And the person making a lot of noise says it's terrible to live near this field where they have machines and dirt and dust and horrible. So that is, they have to get a special permit from zoning to use that. And actually, if the word temporary is not defined in zoning terms, so certainly it's as a staging area for the water project, which is say 6 months, that you could understand might be considered temporary. Now, 2 years. So, but anyway, that's really not our call. That's going to be zoning and so forth. But so that street would be another shared asset to have the pipe coming from this little shed with the material chemical to make it all nice.
Who owns the property? That's
Old Lyme Shores. And to complicate things, there's a deed restriction that says it's supposed to be used for recreation. But a lawyer...
Feed the pellets.
A
To
lawyer,
some, this would be recreation.
Tim, where on the street is this structure supposed to go?
what?
Where on the street itself? We're halfway down?
Oh, it's toward the end.
Okay.
Closer to, what is it, North Street or something? It's before the railroad tracks. Yeah. So zoning doesn't get involved with enforcing deed restrictions. And the lawyer claims for Old Lyme Shores that the deed restriction was more limited and it's not really a restriction anymore. And so it's like, go away. So that'll have to be sorted out.
How about the deal with the Murata? Is that going through
I'm getting to
smoothly
that.
or?
I'm getting to that.
Okay, excuse me.
So that easement was considered at the, we had a hearing on the 8th of September, and the agreement document, the easement agreement, was not in final form, so that was not available for the public to look at, and there was some few people who were perturbed about that, so we didn't act upon it, and we'll act upon it next week. The agreement's hopefully today been posted to our website, along with a map showing, we did have the map at the hearing, but showing where the various elements are.
That's Murata's easement.
No.
Oh,
That's,
this is
that's
the easement.
easement over
You're
our
talking about
streets.
Okay.
Yeah, the 6 places I mentioned.
Old Lyme's easement, and then there's a separate easement for Murata.
Well, I'm getting to that.
Yeah.
That's a long story.
These guys are impatient.
Should have gone first with that one.
Yeah.
So
That's what everybody came
We
for.
just want to get to the grid.
hopefully next week we will revisit the street easement and field a few questions about it, and then say, okay, under COVID, the selectmen are going to vote in lieu of a town meeting, and that'll be done. And then we can have a big signing party with the 8 signatures that need to be on these documents. Getting to now Murata. Murata's parking lot is a direct route rather than go around Robin Hood's barn around it. So, as you may recall, we had a tentative agreement with him to pay him a sum of money, but in conjunction with that, we would have to have a subordination of any mortgage on the property. And his ex-wife is such a mortgage holder. And her subordination was not forthcoming. So we said, okay, that is interesting. So we can go to Plan B, which is to do, you can either call it a condemnation or eminent domain. And it's, I don't think the pavilion's colored pink, but anyway. So, lawyer says the condemnation process is fairly straightforward. You get 2 appraisals. You take the average of the 2 and you have a check, and you submit that plus some paperwork to the court, and they consider it, and after, maybe 60 days or something and more process, you get a certificate of taking. And that would enable us to have a permanent easement of 20 feet on the north side of the parking lot, and a temporary 40-foot easement to work on putting a pipe in there. And then once it's installed and all backfilled, done. So that's what we're doing. We're going in that direction. And so we're, hopefully next week we will have a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen to consider approving me to sign stuff to get this done. And this would otherwise be another town meeting type thing. So once that thing is in the works, and all this stuff, when executed, and hopefully if the timing is tight, the fact that it's going through a court process might be sufficient, I don't know exactly. But then the Fuss and O'Neill engineers for the beaches can actually start putting together the bid package for the shared asset installations, which will start at the border of Old Colony and Old Shores. The collection pipe will come across and wind up at Portland and so forth, and then these things can go. Now, the last element is the paving of 156, which has been completed from up there near Hop Yard Golf Course all the way to Essex Savings at Halls Road. The DEP, most unusual, is looking to keep going and do the rest of it to East Line. And we're saying, hold your horses here, we are hopefully fairly soon going to install another pipe in 156 all the way to East Line. So wouldn't it make sense to just pause a bit longer? And they're drumming their fingers saying, we want to do it now. So we'll see whether they cooperate or whether we have to start getting state reps involved and stuff, who knows. But we don't want to have them pave it, and then they say, if you dig it up, you've got to pave at least to the center line and all that stuff. Okay. The Soundview sidewalks, we had a very long meeting today, but essentially the sidewalks south of Route 156, those are pretty well in hand. There will be two aspects. There'll be installing the sidewalks, which will be a 5-foot sidewalk with a 2.5-foot utility strip for signs and the fire hydrant, if there are any, and mailboxes and stuff. And that is within the town's right-of-way, let's call it, and then some. However, the sidewalk will be, slightly sloping toward the street, whereas now probably their property goes in. And so there need to be some work behind the sidewalk to taper it back to where their property is. And then driveway aprons need to be done so the cars don't just drop off and bottom out. So we had a Saturday session. We talked to as many of the owners there were about half of them that met with us, and most of them were fairly receptive to what we wanted to do. So the sidewalk would be installed. There'd be some work behind the sidewalk and some driveway aprons, and if we have to do some more stuff with their own individual walks that we screw up and so forth. So that's pretty well set. And then on 156, the plan is to come from Cross Lane and go east toward the police station. And the engineer has said that the $400,000 will be insufficient to do both of those plans fully. So a complicating factor is prevailing wage. the grant is for 400,000. Now, the sidewalk, there is no sidewalk at present, it's grass. And the closest sidewalk in Hartford Avenue is south of Bocce. We're starting on the north side of Bocce, and up by the Easy Mart, there is no sidewalk. So we're saying no sidewalk is there. And on 156 from Teddy Pizza, no sidewalk. But we need an interpretation from the Department of Labor because I guess transportation says if you even touch an existing sidewalk, like butting it up, now your new sidewalk is a replacement and not a new sidewalk. But we're saying we're not even there. There's no sidewalk. So we're hoping, because that's $1 million threshold for new construction, a replacement is 100,000.
Oh, God.
And you may recall it used to be 100,000 for renovation and 400,000 for new, and that was figured out in the 80s. They moved the upper one from 400 to $1 million, but they didn't bring the lower one from 100,000. What the hell could you do for 100 grand? So the lobbyists for labor were successful at keeping little jobs in their jurisdiction, and we're saying, I asked the engineer, I said, well, if we had to do prevailing wage, how much of that is going to be soaked up by prevailing wage? He said it could be 30%. So you'd be doing 30% less sidewalk because of the scrap. All right, so we'll see what happens there.
Tim,
Jude?
the original project was Hartford Avenue, right?
And 156.
My understanding of the
My
156
understanding is
part
not that.
was the
That was-
engineering work
Right.
for 156.
Hartford
The
Avenue
money we
was- yeah.
approved, I thought the extra $30,000 was for engineering work to be done on 156 because it made sense to do that. That needed to be done to find out how much it would cost to do the sidewalks.
So you think the 400 was only for Hartford?
Yes.
Correct.
And that this
That's
was
my
an
understanding. Mary
additional
Jo, do you recall
scope
that being the
added.
case?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I was running between the WPCA meeting and this,
Oh.
and I missed your first part. Can you
So,
start again?
sure, we're
Sorry.
talking about the $400,000 that was allocated was for the Hartford Avenue sidewalks. We allocated last year an extra $30,000 that was for design work,
That's 40, actually.
or $40,000 that was for design work on Route 156 sidewalks
Well, that's
to
for
find
all-
out how much that would
Oh,
cost.
no,
It was
oh,
not
not
to.
quite,
It was not my impression that that was to build those sidewalks, but to find out how much it would cost to build them by having an engineer
But
scope it out.
That can't possibly be right.
right,
Not a sidewalk.
the grant only covers construction. The
And-
town is responsible for the design. And so when we originally, or I think when Bonnie originally came to the Board of Finance, it was based on an estimate of $30,000 for the town to support the design work by the engineer for the whole project. And when we went to bid with all the engineers, the bids came in such that in order to complete the design for the whole project, was going to be $40,000. That would have been, BSC would have been the low bidder to do the whole project.
Right.
So we came back to the Board of Finance for the additional 10 because the 30 was approved at town meeting.
Right.
So it was $40,000 to design the entire project.
So what's the 400 for?
But was the $400,000 when we applied for that grant, that was for Hartford Avenue sidewalks only, wasn't it? Not for sidewalk construction
Yes.
on 156.
The application was for sidewalks on Hartford Avenue, and when we went to interview with the design companies, they felt that we had more than enough in 400,000 construction
Yeah.
to also design 156. So in order to get the full design,
But not
that was the 40,000 to get the
Right.
full design.
design.
I get that, but again, was it anticipated that the 400,000 would cover construction of the sidewalks on Hartford Avenue and 156?
Or plus a little bit.
I don't believe so, although
Yeah.
I don't believe so initially, but when we did speak with the design engineers, they felt we would, if we didn't use the 400, we would be giving it back. We had enough to go forward, to at least do something on 156.
That's
So
what-
that
get it
was
designed,
part of the
right,
design
yeah.
on 156.
Right.
Mhm.
And that's why we designed it, so we might get 100 yards of sidewalk there done under the
That's
$400,000 grant, and
Right.
maybe apply for another
Right.
grant for the extra,
Down the
Right.
road, yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But we don't
Right.
have
That's
to
correct.
build the entire
Okay.
scope of the project.
I just,
That was designed.
No, and
Okay, that's
actually,
all I want to
and
clarify.
and
Yeah.
it's not just the cost of the sidewalks, because
thank you, Mary Jo.
I'm not sure that
You're welcome.
they knew the cost of the improvements to be done on private property behind the Hartford
Right.
Avenue sidewalks, because we're trying to get a number on what that is.
Yep.
Because we're gonna spend a few bucks on a number of these houses, about half of them.
I guess I'm questioning, can't we just spend 400,000 as well as the 40 in design and see where it gets us? And
Right.
not
That's right,
commit
that's what's
to
That's
that?
what-
I think that's what the
Okay,
whole, I
that's
think
fine.
that's what the intent was.
Yeah.
Well,
And it may not get us any, with what
Okay.
Tim said, it may not get us any sidewalks built on
Oh,
156.
I think the designer thinks we're about 150 shy to do everything.
Right.
So that might
Depending
mean,
on-
But we'll
But
Yeah.
but is the 400,000 going to get Hartford Avenue done?
yeah, oh
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Because I think
Plus,
that
but-
was
But
Yeah.
not,
the original intent, I thought.
I didn't
Yeah.
want to go out
Yeah.
on a limb.
It might be
Okay.
something like
It's fine.
between a third to a half of the 156 sidewalk.
Yeah,
And you
Which-
want to break it off at a logical
Which is
point.
good news.
right.
Right.
Yeah, which is great.
That is
Yeah.
good.
And how about applying for a grant or grants to complete the 156 portion?
That would be a
Have you
separate-
looked into that?
That would be
Yeah.
a separate application. Yeah, so, I mean, these grants, you can file for them from time to time. So that would be the intention, to go back to DOT and say we're, say,
Right.
150 shy. And another thing that came up today is that the engineering budget of 40,000 is not, that's a turnkey deal for the up through bidding for all of it. So then the question comes up, well, what about the construction supervision? And that means you monitor it, you watch the requisitions, you look at change orders, all that stuff. And so,
But I thought the state got paid for that, because this is a DOT grant. Their whole gig is they get their overhead covered by these grants. This thing should cost 250 grand, right? But the DOT administers it. They are the quantity surveyors, right? And that's what happened with the 750 grand with the original, from Bocce all the way to the flagpole for the original project.
but the 400 is for the actual sidewalks and bricks and mortar kind of stuff. The 40 is for the design, so there's going to be probably another close to 35 to 40 to supervise the project and do the whole thing.
I thought that supervision was provided by the state DOT as part of the 400.
No, it would be-
But it's just a question because it's already laid out in the
In the
budget.
grant.
Yeah, so,
Well, it would be, at this point, it's hard to say because they're still putting stuff together, but it appears that if we were to go forward with the 400 and we pave till we stop, we're going to need more money in terms of the supervision part, the construction supervision. And so
from
we'll
a
be
third
back-
party, not the state.
Huh?
From a third party engineer, not the state.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it could be the same engineer we've been using, who I think has been quite good. You could bid it, we would have to bid it out, but we'll see. But the point is, it's not in a budget right now. So that is a little awkward, and so we'll have to see. Could we say, well, how much of that could go back into the $400,000 grant? And some of it will. And the bidding, actually, he he said, oh, that's in our now contract, so we'll be back and can reduce that money for that. So we'll be back to talk about that, but
What's the timeline on trying to put these sidewalks in the spring?
yeah, probably April and May.
After all the sewer lines and water lines are dug across and,
Yeah,
So you're not ripping
sewer's coming, but they can borrow under that.
okay.
So. Yeah, so it's gonna be a war zone.
You hope.
Oops.
But it's in the same fiscal year, so that's too bad.
They can run the laterals under sidewalks, so that's not a problem.
Yeah.
Sewer pipe, not so much.
All right, so that's just a little bit of a
156.
update. We just heard about that today.
Fairy tale.
Haynes Park, they will be hopefully starting on the 21st of September with the building. It's a 90 days, so just around Christmas time it will be completed. And unfortunately, Mr. Bugby was not able to drive the bulldozer into the existing washroom building. He had requested he be able to do that. But Public Works was taking it down and putting it in cans and taking it away. I talked to this Mr. Neviser, and he's okay with us taking an electric line from the boathouse through a conduit that exists underground and using that for the building as opposed to having separate service, because then we save $50 a month for when it's not being used just as a placekeeper. That was nice. So that's coming along nicely. We met the principals and they seem very diligent and looks good. Senior Center, no report. There's a new survey floating around, but and Mile Creek Bridge, the decking after 2 or 3 delays has been delivered and installed. So the decking is on, but they have to, it's 3 sections, so they have to put the caulking in between the sections.
There's about
put the
6-inch
railings
gap
on.
between the sections? Seems like there's like a 6-inch gap between the
Bigger
sections.
than that.
It was
Is it?
one on one side of it.
There's expansion joints.
Well, it's down the center. Who's doing the laundry on that thing?
Here's an ice maker.
They're
Mute it.
they're practicing their tap dancing.
Janet?
I just wanted to
Hey,
know,
tell them to mute.
There's a lot of shuffling going on that's a little disturbing. I don't know who's
You can
playing with
hit-
their phones.
Andy, you can hit the pound sign twice. Twice.
All participants have been muted.
Oh, nice.
I forget the code to unmute them.
Doesn't happen.
Dictatorial
Janet.
powers are trickling down to the local.
Could have used that a couple of months ago. Oh, excuse me.
Janet's got a question here. Tim,
no,
hang on.
I have a statement. I was told that the Senior Center Building Committee's next meeting is on the same night, October 20th, I believe, we meet here. So I will not be able to attend it, but I was invited.
I told Jerry as well I couldn't be there, so hopefully they'll avoid that meeting date.
Well, she said everybody else wanted to come on that night, so.
Well,
So
Where's
she
the money
knows,
come
because I
from?
talked to her today.
Yeah, right.
don't be stupid.
Yes.
Okay, so the bridge, after like 3 weeks delay, is moving forward. I think we're talking under a month to have it all wrapped up, and the school is aware of the detour and stuff.
I like how quiet it is.
I
on
bet.
that stretch of my
I
old
bet.
road where my back window faces.
Yeah. Grassy Hill, no report. Okay, Ferry Road sidewalks. Well, in the budget, we have $102,000 to do the sidewalk, and it's about, 50 feet down Ferry Road and down to where the fire well is. And the engineer said, we could do a steep with this if you want. So we Warp Speed threw together a steep application for $150, where the town would pay $24,000,
Nice.
and we'd get $120 26,000 from Steve out of 128 max. So that would include not only the sidewalk panels, but it would fix some catch basins and some other things, and add a new catch basin on the Lieutenant River, I guess, which is, the engineers seem to know a lot about all that stuff. So I think within probably 30 days, we will get a yes or a no on that, but that would be pretty darn nice if
That'd be
that
good.
worked out. Halls Road Committee had a meeting, 3 engineers, of which BSC, the one doing Soundview sidewalks, was one. There was Newman, which was 2 outfits teaming together, and then Robert Orr, Associates. He was very theoretical. And so it seemed that BSC and Newman were the committee like them. They didn't make a decision, and I would say a majority of the committee was more impressed with BSC, which was more focused on a plan to do the sidewalks and the beautification of the street, as opposed to probably doing a heck of a lot of work on changing all the buildings like a monopoly board. So they didn't vote on it. The bids were for the phase $35,000 to $40,000, which falls within the amount of money that's available for this thing. So at the end of the meeting, I said, we have private property, which is governed by private owners, and if they aren't going to play ball, the plan is interesting, but it's not going to get done. We have a state road, and unless the state buys into what we're talking about, we can't call the shots on that. We have zoning rules that need to be modified, which could well be done if zoning is in favor of doing that. And it was one other thing. So before we make a big commitment, we ought to have consensus, because this is just very preliminary. Now, to get into doing sidewalks and all that stuff, that's going to cost a bunch of money, and certainly, you know, the master plan, depending on how big that is, how much is that going to be? I mean, will this get us a master plan, and if we don't know what the private landowners want to do we want to spend a lot of time on that? Because
no matter what you do, the first starting point is to understand where the setbacks are.
yeah,
And that's probably 20 grand worth of work right there, to really figure out where the property lines are, where the setbacks are, where the utility easements are, all that stuff.
hopefully the deal, because I know on 156 they're supposed to have pretty good accuracy where it is.
They've been all over Halls Road too, doing all sorts of different.
But remember that they tried to put in a crosswalk, okay? But you're within wetlands,
Yes, that was the button.
and they wouldn't let you?
Well, I asked him, there was a guy asking about a stoplight near Big Y,
Right.
and I said, why don't you move the button near Webster Bank building so people could cross there? And he said, no, it's in a wetland, you can't do that.
Tim, under those, with the 3 different organizations that were making a bid and a pitch the other night for Halls Road improvement, weren't the menus or the bids or estimates set up sort of a menu, like through crosswalks and talking to DOT, it would be this much. Do we have to act on the total of their package, or can we say, look, we're willing to go through such and such
I think it's very preliminary. I think it's very preliminary. They put out some concepts.
Right.
The committee could really roll up the sleeves and examine them and see what's good.
Yeah.
Now, Edie says that you need a master plan in order to get sidewalk money grants. So maybe that is true, but how?
But the
big
first
of a
step is having a
plan?
conversation with DOT.
Right, DOT
And the
seems to be
land, and
first
the
in
budding
line.
landowners too.
Potential. Yeah,
Because
depending on where those lines are, yeah.
I mean, I can't see approving there, some were 39,000, some were, say, 48, all again within the 48,000. Can't this be managed a little tighter than that?
well, this is very early to
Yeah.
conclude. I mean, these were just some.
That was the rollover, right? The 48
Right.
grant was the rollover. So.
Right, the unused stuff.
Yeah.
And so we probably don't want Yale Study 2 for the rest of the money. So it's a good start. I don't.
Oh, I agree, it's a good start, but
but-
when you talk to DOT, I don't think
And
any of it really.
they're aware that whatever they come up with has to go through selectmen and finance and so forth, so. But that's where we are, but this is not like, that's the only money you're gonna have to spend on engineering.
Right.
It's just the beginning. So, there'll be a lot more on that. You may have heard Mark Diebold and other partners are considering a 216 unit,
224?
I think it's less than that.
224.
Well, I also heard it's something in that range. On Hadley.
Oh, 216 you said.
216.
Oh, I thought you said 260.
So, it's multifamily zone now, and so he's gonna be going before affordable committee. It would be 30% affordable, it'd be very similar to that Saybrook Junction near the train station,
Yep.
which apparently is nice, and he was saying that these things, market rent would be starting at probably a couple thousand a month and stuff, so it's not gonna be cheesy. And some of them would have garage underneath, and then the units above. It's 20 acres he has there, so it could be quite exciting. Now, the big deal is they probably need sewer for something like that. I don't know if 20 acres they could do a system, and it's rocky. So you could either go across the street to East Lyme, and if East Lyme, Colton Road.
Do they have sewers there? Bolton?
Yeah, because they have a public works building that's serviced by it. So that would be pretty good.
How many kids in the school system? Potentially.
Hard to say. I mean, it's 1 and 2 bedrooms, so it isn't like lots of bedrooms unless you stack them up.
Well, all the people that work at Foxwoods, they seem to stack 3 families in a house.
Yeah. Anyway, that's bubbling along. And if they don't get sewer and water, who knows whether it would be feasible.
Where would the water come from?
East Line also?
It could. I think they have water lines. Whether they, I think Mark, there could be enough water on property, but you'd have to, they could have maybe multiple wells.
It's all pretty bony property, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
But he's gonna take a lot of that down, is my understanding. So, if there's a lot of ledge, he's gonna have to blast to do what he wants to do. So.
It's right at the back of my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like
On
they
the other
do
side,
with
we're on the other
Rye.
side of Kellogg.
Remember the top of
Yeah, that's
Rybrook
right.
there? They blew that all up. If you go up the Rocky Neck Connector, you look right there.
Yep.
That was all.
Yep.
It's probably 3 weeks of blasting, like
Guys,
3 months of rocket truck.
Kind of sort
Tim, is he working with Hope on this? I mean,
The what?
is he trying to work with Hope or another organization? I mean,
He
or at least
has
with
2
our,
other investors, and as I understand it, they want to privately hold it.
But it would be 830G.
it would.
It would be.
It would be 30% affordable.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
But he would need 830G in order to get approved what he wants to get approved.
Yeah,
For a
the
lot
density.
of different reasons. Yeah, for density and parking and everything else.
Okay.
But it would give affordable housing 60 units if it's, or 70 units.
Yeah,
Yeah.
about
Which is
65.
That's right.
Double what we were going to have on Halls.
Which would be a big
Yeah.
uptick for us.
Exactly.
The bus barn lease is is signed really. It's changed a lot since we structured it, I don't know how many years ago, But remember, we were getting interest on our money and all that stuff, and then that went away, and then the payments. So the lease that I sent out, it was going to be $42,000 a year for 2 years, and that would basically make us whole on the investment that we put in, not interest on our money, mind you, but. And then I don't know where I got this, but I put $20,000 a year for 3 years on the rest of the 5-year lease, which is 2020, for creating a reserve, which would be 60 grand, because we wanted 50,000 way back when. And M&J called up and said, well, wait a minute, it's supposed to be, I don't know, 10 or 15, I forget which now. And I said, really? Yeah, I mean, our numbers to the school wouldn't support the extra money. And I said, well, this is not the school's lease. And so I got to go to the business manager and say, how's this work now? Because see, they give us prices per bus. And so I think they say the lease and our cost of running the operation is $1 million. So now we got to go back and how many buses runs and, you know, come up with a day rate for a bus. So he said, the way your lease works, my rates are not accurate. And I'm sure they can afford another 10 grand a year, but anyway. So I got to figure out, because the school, it just seems like these numbers, there's nothing that says, I don't see any document that says the lease will be 42 and then lower numbers. So anyway, we'll get it done. It's just kind of out of our hands, you know.
Well, it's going to start needing stuff now, because it's how old? 15 years old?
Well, and we were already spending money, there's no place to pull it from.
Right.
So we were supposed to have a reserve all this time, and it was washed out along with the interest, so.
BJ?
Are you done with that?
Yep.
And can we go back for a minute to the 216 units? And maybe, Dave, can you estimate an order of magnitude of the cost?
Of what?
What I'm interested in is the tax revenue that could be generated by 216 units.
Yeah, so it's probably, call it 200 grand a unit, roughly, of value, depends on the cost and that sort of thing. So it's probably a, you know, call it a
40 million?
Let's say it's a $45 million.
Well, they're going to have a pool and a clubhouse and.
Yeah, they can have a bunch of stuff. So $45 million, right?
Added to our grand list or something.
Times 70%.
Yeah.
Right? So that's 28.
Say 30 million.
Yeah, so 30 million.
Times 20 mils even.
Ish.
$600,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
now, if you have 100 extra kids.
100 extra kids in school.
But again, our community is such that, you know, there's strong demand for Lyme Regis and that sort of thing. So a lot of the 2 bedrooms, you know, people downsizing and that sort of thing. And again, it's not, whether it is or not, if you had a bunch of 3 bedrooms, you know, you look at the sound over in East Lyme, and you look at the composition of, and again, this is, you can't argue against the composition if it's 830G. But what is over in Old Saybrook as well, and it's transitional professionals and that sort of thing. So.
Right. And to the school expense, you guys, obviously we have plenty of infrastructure for more kids. So the incremental cost is really going to be salaries for teachers, and I have no idea how much that is per kid. But my guess is that
I think it's around 19 grand a kid.
Right now.
19 grand is all inclusive, I would assume, of all costs.
And it does step. But
without running the numbers, I'm sure we would make, the town would have a substantial net surplus.
I don't think that's the case.
From the net taxation, you don't think?
I mean, you can run the numbers. Again, it's difficult with the schools because it's step. You have capacity until you don't, and then you have to add teachers and that sort of thing. You could do that math, but if you're adding up, and again, if you had 40 kids instead of 100, that's different as well.
If you have,
$600,000, given the additional services and things, it is incremental. If you have a bunch of kids, you're going to very quickly get to a negative in terms of your net. But if you don't have a bunch of kids, then it could be break even or positive.
each had 50 kids times 20,000 is $1 million. So that washes out. If there were 50 kids in there
And if that's the right
that are
number.
school-age kids, and yeah,
So
it would make it,
it's an observation
Right.
because it can't be used in argument against an 830G.
No.
But it's probably break even.
I'm just thinking
I mean,
about the Board of Finance had.
you could also look at,
Yeah.
you know, as the sewers are being built out in the beach communities, how many of those homes are gonna become year-round? They have other hurdles to jump, you know, how many of those homes are gonna become year-round and have kids in the school? I've heard of families that have relocated from East Hartford to here for this school year, I think.
Academic rentals.
No, people that own the homes here that have, instead of going back to East Hartford, they're keeping their kids here in their beach house.
Seward Beach House.
Well, not Seward yet, but year-round beach house that's currently year-round and able to be year-round, and they're in school here.
Yeah, but on the other hand, with an aging population in town.
Yep.
And folks either dying or moving out of town, you know, the survival of the town requires people to move in.
Absolutely.
I think the same theory was when Pointed Woods was putting in their sewers and water too, and they were afraid of a great influx, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, it hasn't happened.
It gets pretty costly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
All right, two more things. Election November 3rd. I saw something from Secretary of State.
What?
Text.
When is that election?
November 3rd. We're supposed to get 6,150 about, and I think of that, 2,100 may be what was for the primary, for the safe election stuff, and so I'm not just sure all this stuff. But they've already received something like 600 absentee apps and town clerk. So I think Vicky is getting a little concerned, but you know, she's having Jennifer Datum help her out, and maybe Eileen Coffey will come in. And I think it's crazy that the poor town clerks are saddled with what I think should be registrar's responsibility, but there it is. So we may try to bolster her, because if they want to start closing offices and keeping up with the ballots, you know, we got to help them out. So
And does that go to COVID? Those are COVID costs?
it is. Well, it's Secretary of State money, so I don't know if it's explicitly COVID, because they.
No, but my
but
point
it could,
is,
if we go over what we've been given by the Secretary of
Right.
State, could it be going to Dave Roberge's?
I doubt it. How
It's extra labor, it's COVID related. I mean, with an influx of absentee ballots.
look, the Secretary of State unilaterally is sending everyone an application
Right.
for.
I know.
That's a COVID-related item.
Well, we'd have about
I haven't got one.
I haven't
We'd
either.
have,
Everybody else in my house.
we'd have around $4,000, let's say, for them to hire some temps.
I think given the experience of the registrars with the primary Board of Finance, I would personally be very happy to make sure that we've got a big budget to make sure things go smoothly.
Yeah.
Because the primary was a disaster, not because of the registrars, because they were getting direction to accept ballots that they wouldn't have on the day of the primary, and lots of other weird stuff that just made them nuts. So
Right.
if they're, yeah.
Well, they have all the shields and junk that they acquired already, so they don't have to do that again.
And I guess if they go over ex post facto, it'll come back to Board of
It'll
Finance.
come back to us anyway.
Right.
I mean, as long as it's less than 20 grand, I mean,
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
which it would be.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought this, I voted in the gym at the primary, and I think they did a great job, and, you know, it'll be a little simpler, because you won't have, you'll have one set of tables with the names and addresses as opposed to the party tables, because you had the two parties. but you probably have more people participating in person too than you did.
Oh,
And
it
the
was
primary.
like 30% in person, 60% absentee.
Yeah. And it may be the same in November,
Could well
but
be.
the
But it's
school-
also the November election versus the primary.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's good that we're over at the school. I mean, forget
Yeah.
COVID, we wouldn't have been able to do it at the firehouse.
Yeah.
And just as a footnote, the Board of Selectmen approved change of location through the end of the calendar year. So we gotta keep our eye on the ball, and if that works out, if the town meeting is permissible, we have to do that at the January meeting, let's say, to make that permanent.
And I understand school is gonna be open on election day though.
I thought it was closed for middle
I
school.
don't think.
I thought I heard that they're gonna be open.
I don't think so. If they are,
Originally, they said they're gonna be closed. I know, but,
or they might do a professional day.
oh yeah, that
That counts.
wouldn't matter.
And last, the Board of Assessment Appeals had the vehicle thing last week. 0 people came, so. I think next year we're gonna say appointments only,
That's, yeah.
2 hours.
Just sitting there twiddling your thumbs.
So I think if you do 9/9, you might get them back online if you wanna hear them.
Andy?
I think 2 9s get the thing unmuted.
Sorry. 2 9s?
Try 2 9s.
All participants have been unmuted.
Hi, Andy. Can I make a comment?
You sure can.
Thank you. This is Anna. I just wanted to agree. I would like to second Dave's comment about making sure there's funds available for the town clerk for the election. I think some of the registrar situation was due to the storm right before the primary, but there were also a lot less absentee ballots that they were dealing with, and I think that just the age and ability of our registrars to get things done super quickly is pretty much maxed out right now after having worked with them a little bit. So I think if they need help, or if the town clerk needs help, I think we should definitely make sure that that's available to them. And if we need to do that, beforehand and let them know that we can approve some funds for that, I think we should. I think if it's COVID, we can try to get that money back. But even if it's not considered COVID, I think that this is just very important that everyone's able to vote.
I think it's
and,
important.
that their votes are, that we take it really seriously ourselves, and we make sure that the funds are available to them.
Well, I don't think I recommend approving funds in advance, but I think they know, and Tim can convey that they're aware that, the town's gonna support, and they're gonna do what needs to be done to do a good job. Any other comments?
Okay, could we get, is there any way, Tim, you could talk to them between now and our October meeting, so that if they do feel like by October they need help, they can have a number for us and we could get that approved, so they, if they need to hire somebody, that's hard to do without a budget, so.
You've already
if that's
conveyed
the situation.
Tim will talk to them and make sure that they know they have our support for what they need to get the job done in November. Not that we need to vote on it at our October 21st meeting.
And even the registrars might have some needs too.
I mean, Nicole would, if they have overruns, Nicole would normally look at other places within their budget that are unspent. But in the end, whether we approve it in November or January or as things shake out, as
Just
long as
making sure
they know they
support.
don't try to wing it.
Yeah.
Yep, good point. Any other comments?
I move we adjourn.
I hear a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second? Mr. Garvin, thank you all very much. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Upper left.
Thanks, Tim. You're getting good at this. Man, good job.
You're getting used to it.
Yeah, pretty sad.
But have you got
I
your
would
car
still
figured out yet?
suggest, Tim, you can plug external
Yeah.
microphones into this.
Yeah.
We get a couple microphones, one in each end of